Hello, my dudes. Today, I want to talk about financial rage bait and the morality of debt. Obviously, being in debt is not ideal, but especially for those of us living in the US, debt is very common. The cost of living is very high and wages are definitely not keeping up. This country is huge and car dependent, so most people have car loans. Then we have student loans because our college education system is broken, and medical debt because our healthcare system is nonsensical. Noticing a pattern here? Oh yeah, and then there's credit card debt. I've seen so many comments from people from other countries asking Americans about their credit card debt, and they're like, why would you spend money you don't have? And that is part of it, but it's really not that simple. All of these systemic factors make it very easy to get into debt, and many people are surviving off credit cards, buying essentials like groceries, just to get by. Plus, credit scores are so crucial here. We're pretty much required to have some debt in order to build our credit, which we need in order to get housing and cars, etc. So even if you disagree with the concept, it's almost impossible to opt out of. Now, it wouldn't be a money-related video without me saying the obligatory, this is not financial advice. Years ago, I built up $10,000 of credit card debt. Some was definitely just overspending, but a lot of it was me as a college student trying to get through without any other financial support. I was working, but just wasn't able to earn enough. Then you throw in some emergency dental bills, and it all added up very quickly. Eventually, I was able to hunker down, get my budget together, and pay off that debt in about 6 months. I was being much more careful about my spending, but you know what the real key was to paying off my debt? Earning more money. Shocker. Anyway, I am always happy to witness other people's debt payoff journeys, especially on social media. I love seeing people be more transparent about their finances, get a hold of their debt, make a plan to pay it off, and be able to create a healthier, reasonable, sustainable budget. We truly love to see it. And going through an intense payoff journey can make you very anti-debt, especially when a lot of financial figures say that there is no acceptable debt other than a mortgage, maybe. You should never buy anything you can't buy outright. Or heck, you can't afford something unless you could afford to buy it twice. That is how you never get in debt again. And I get the idea, but I don't think that's reasonable for the vast majority of people, especially again, those who are living paycheck to paycheck. I think it is a lot more realistic to realize if debt is somewhat inevitable or can be necessary. How can we make sure our debt payments are manageable? How can we get lower interest rates? Can we still find a way to save and put money toward retirement while paying our debts down? I absolutely believe that you can be in debt and still in control of your finances. But many financial pundits believe and promote the idea that debt is bad, morally bad. There is no excuse and you should feel horrible until it's gone. So that brings us to today's video. I am fascinated by the narratives about debt and the moralizing of it. I personally believe debt is morally neutral. Whether or not you have debt doesn't make you a good or bad person, and I'm sick of people saying or implying that. People are struggling and feeling guilty enough as it is. And in comes the financial rage bait. There are so many finance influencers who post about other people's spending, budgets, and debts, claiming to be helping, offering advice, when in reality most of what they're doing is just yelling at and mocking people. Is this supposed to be some form of being scared straight? Like, make sure you get your finances in order. Otherwise, you deserve to have thousands of comments roasting and harassing you. I thought we were past shaming people for buying coffee and avocado toast and pretending like that's the reason their finances are all out of whack. But apparently not. This rhetoric is still alive and well. And I know rage bait exists to bait us. And here I am engaging with it, just as they hoped. But instead of arguing in the comment sections, I wanted to use some of these examples just to talk about money and debt. Hopefully with a little more empathy and less yelling. Let's start with this TikTok that came across my feed recently. I think it is the perfect example of financial rage bait.
With my credit card, I maxed that out to $4,000.
What do you mean you max it out? Max it out or maxed it out?
So my max, I got confused with the credit debt and credit limit.
I saw so many commenters roasting this person, and I get it. It seems very shocking. How could someone get a credit card and not know the very basics, the fundamentals of how they work? Clearly, this is an issue of financial literacy.
Me and my boyfriend, me and my friends, we would go out and I'm like, oh, I'll pay for everybody. I got it. I'll spend the money. Don't worry about it. It's just a credit card. I would pay. And then I called my mom one day and I wanted her to be proud of me. So it's just like, hey, I've got $4,000 credit on my credit card. And she's like, credit limit or credit debt? I was like, what's debt? And she's like, oh, that's bad.
I will admit, this clip is pretty entertaining. It's easy to get roped in. Like, is this person really serious? So I checked out more videos from this TikTok and discovered the world of Caleb Hammer's Financial Audit. This is basically a newer, younger version of Dave Ramsey's call-in show. You know, people have questions, they've got financial problems, and the host is there to help. Right? In these financial audits, Caleb will look at the person's bank statements, go through a bunch of transactions, they'll look at debts and income and try to build a budget that makes sense for this person. Great. But if you check out, for example, the clips that make it to the TikTok page, it becomes very clear what sort of content Caleb is prioritizing, and it doesn't seem to be like helpful, kind financial advice. If you look at his top viewed TikToks, a couple of guests pop up a lot, so let's focus on them. This is Aaron. Cutting in real quick, Caleb's show does not list guests' preferred pronouns or link their socials, so when I filmed this, I just referred to Aaron by name or with they as a neutral term, but after filming, I was able to find Aaron's Twitter and confirm that her pronouns are she, her. I just never like to assume, especially when I'm featuring someone in a video. One of the financial audit's signatures is Caleb listing out a bunch of transactions in this very incredulous tone.
Amazon, Domino's, Jack in the Box, Amazon, Insomnia Cookies, Chick-fil-A, PayPal.
But I just find this so like unhelpful. You could read anyone's bank transaction and just be like listing things. I feel like outside of the context of amounts and their actual allocated budget, we're meant to just be shocked that they're like spending money at all. How dare they have any transactions on things that aren't pure essentials?
Amazon, Chipotle, Spotify. Don't need to listen to ads even at the discounted student rate when we are in debt and can't afford that.
What, Spotify?
Yeah, dude. What do you mean?
It's $10 a month. It's really all right. Should I save the 120 a year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if you scrape together 120 a year here, 120 a year
I
here,
understand
120 a year here, it's typically the small things that hurt Americans' finances
Sure.
the most on a month-to-month basis. So
I get the idea that small expenses do add up, but it's definitely not the small things. It's typically the small things that are hurting Americans the most. No, totally disagree. I would say it's the big things like housing, car payments, inflated grocery costs, medical bills, student loans. I'm pretty sure those are the things that are making or breaking people's budgets.
But I want to like enjoy my life, you know? It's really not that bad.
aren't you delaying more than anything though? The true enjoyment of life. True enjoyment of life is not stressing about extra finances. True enjoyment of life is actually being able to thrive and do the things you want to do.
Honestly, Aaron, I hear you, and I believe that it is important to be able to enjoy your life and have little things that bring you some joy while you're paying off debt. But are you delaying the true enjoyment of life? Are you saying that true enjoyment of life can only come once you've paid off all your debts? Because for a lot of people, that day would never come, Caleb. I'm sure he's referring to the idea of like financial freedom, being debt-free. Yeah, that would sound amazing. But again, is that realistic for most people? A lot of people are struggling so badly, they're trying to get help managing the day-to-day, maybe getting out of living paycheck to paycheck. Being debt-free someday would be incredible, but how far off is that? How feasible is it?
When we're delaying and kicking the can down the road, delaying actually
No.
taking control of our
You're right.
finances and being mature.
No. Hang on. So I need you to stop using the word mature.
Why?
This is very upsetting. I'm not immature. We just view things differently than you.
Whoa. There's immature financial behavior. That does not mean you as a whole person is
Right.
immature.
But I don't disagree with you about taking control of things. I just disagree about like how the Spotify charge fits into that.
Now this interaction pissed me off. Again, I'm always team Aaron. Aaron is totally right in being like, hey, you don't need to call me immature. We're having a conversation. And this is where the environment that Caleb is cultivating comes in. If you look at his YouTube or his TikTok comments, honestly, a lot of times they are vile. And that is not a word I use lightly. Many commenters were like, oh, Aaron's being defensive and arrogant, saying that they understand. What? How is it arrogant to say, I understand? You're having a conversation. Yep, I understand. Yep, I understand. Especially because many people do understand financial concepts. In theory, you get it. You get where it's coming from. But it can still be hard to actually implement and stick to. I definitely don't think saying I understand is at all being defensive. And anyway, it makes sense to feel a little defensive or react that way when literally your entire financial picture is being dragged through the mud.
So you don't agree with the death by 1,000 cuts?
The 1,000 cuts are not So Spotify is something that I have in my budget.
We could talk about death by 1,000 cuts if Aaron had like hundreds of dollars of subscriptions every month. But again, right now, We are talking about $10. And yes, it's not really just about Spotify, but Caleb latched onto this intentionally. Aaron is just insisting, hey, this one thing means a lot to me. I want to prioritize it. This $10 is so worth it to me. Let's fit it in my budget. Can we make some changes, make some cuts elsewhere? Can we free up the $10? But before we continue, this portion of today's video is sponsored by Warby Parker. Warby Parker is your one-stop shop for prescription eyewear, contacts, and eye exams. You can visit one of their over 250 locations in the US and Canada, or shop online. I definitely recommend using the virtual try-on to find your favorites. It's available on the website or the app, and it is very realistic and super helpful. So I recently got new sunglasses. These are the Vela Extra Wide in Aventurine Tortoise with polished gold. These are funky and oversized with the dainty gold temples and the color combination of tortoise, green, and gold. I mean, hello. These are sturdy but still very comfortable on my nose and my ears, which is very important. Plus, all of their sunglasses have scratch resistant and UV blocking lenses. So if you need new glasses soon, check out Warby Parker. Their glasses start at just $95 with free shipping and 30-day returns. Click the link in my description, test out the virtual try-on, and you can get 15% off when you order 2 or more prescription pairs online or in stores.
What'd you come here for?
What do you mean?
Like, I mean, do you want my take? Like, you're just disagreeing with it. Like, even something as simple as Spotify.
Honestly, who's being arrogant and defensive now? Your guests aren't allowed to even question your take. They're not allowed to have a different opinion.
There's the people out there that's like, don't ever go get Starbucks, you're ruining your entire future. That's not me. I'm not that. But I'm like, we do that stuff when we're out of debt and we have a fully funded emergency fund. I'm not saying this Spotify thing is what's killing you. It's just an example of one of the many things that have been added up that we went over.
The reality is there are so many different methods and strategies to pay off debt or to budget, but these financial creators tend to act like their way is the only way. It's their method. They also tend to act like budgeting and personal finance is purely just about numbers, but it's actually very emotional, and we are not robots just sticking to a spreadsheet, and that's why these extremely strict budgets tend to fail, because if you don't take into account people's human behaviors when they're expressing to you what their needs or their preferences are, of course, you've got to make some changes. You have to be able to do that, but you have to have some wiggle room. You have to acknowledge that people are people. And also, to be picky, you are actually being that coffee is ruining your budget type of person. Like, you're doing that right now. You're saying a $10 expense needs to be cut. If anything, that's way less than getting coffee even like once a week.
No, you haven't explained by why Spotify itself is some special entity.
I use it all the time. I listen to hours and hours and hours of Spotify.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can't listen to an ad?
It's worth it to me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know what you want me to say. It's worth it to me.
He frames this as such a gotcha, and the audience, again, is very annoying. Oh, Aaron was silent. Did you hear that? But I think they were speechless because it's such a dumb, nitpicky question. I would be baffled as well. People are allowed to have priorities and preferences in their budget, and you know what? I've had Spotify since like 2013, and I have had premium every minute because it's worth it for me. There are some services where, yeah, I'd be willing to do the ad version. That's true, but like some of them I don't want to deal with the ads. Is that okay? This just goes back to, again, that whole idea that if you're broke or you're in debt, you don't deserve anything nice. You get no little treats, no joys. You can suffer for potentially years while you're trying to pay off your debt. I did listen to Aaron's entire episode on YouTube, and at the end, Caleb suggests with his new budget plan that Aaron can pay $1,000 a month towards student loans every month until they graduate in 2026, which could be about $30,000 in that time frame. So the student loans would go from $69,000 to $39,000. That's huge, yes.
What are your thoughts on all this?
Maintaining my spending in a spot where I can put that 1,000, or even just like if I wasn't perfect, like 900, 850, like makes a huge difference. Building in some like room for like not being perfect is like good for just my mental health. It's like, you know, I can make a lot of progress.
And I agree with you in a certain way. I'll just try to reframe it. If we build room in our budget to mess up, we enable ourselves preemptively to mess up.
So it wasn't what I meant. I meant more so like not kicking myself if I don't meet the 1,000 every month. But like that would be the goal.
I get you. Yep.
This reminds me of all the fantasy budgets I've created, like all the budgets I've made with the best case scenario in mind. Oh, the maximum amount of income I might earn and my lowest possible expenses and me never stepping outside my budget ever. Those budgets are the worst because they are not accurate and they always fail. If anything, it sets us up to fail because we're not giving ourselves a little bit of wiggle room or like just space for reality. What extra expenses or emergencies or increased costs might come in the future? Wouldn't you want to have some room for that? I think it is good to set solid goals. Be a bit aggressive in your debt payoff if you can, but also make it reasonable and understand that hitting 50% or 75% of your monthly goal is a lot better than nothing. So the reason I've been so harsh to Caleb so far, you might be thinking, oh, maybe I'm being too mean. No, I've watched at least 2 full episodes of his podcast, which was more than enough. I've seen a lot of these clips, and the way that he treats his guests, the way that he portrays them in video thumbnails, look at how disgusting these are. These are horrible. The titles of these videos. It is beyond clickbait. It is so dehumanizing. It is misogynistic. These are so offensive. And so he's not approaching his guests with empathy and care and respect. He is literally seeking to humiliate them under the guise of helping them. It is so horrible.
And maybe,
Look,
just maybe,
can I say something positive?
Just maybe someone will actually get help out there from watching. They're like,
gonna
oh,
tell you
maybe
something
I'm a
positive.
defensive stupid. I'm not gonna be like her.
Why are you yelling?
You've seen this show. I yell. That's how this works. You signed the up to be on it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to yell back.
So yes, that's why I'm being harsh on him, because I just think this content strategy is gross. It's similar to like Dr. Phil or again Dave Ramsey, that like faux fatherly tough love kind of style. And it's like, first of all, Caleb, you're too young for that. Like, you're giving boomer energy and pretending you're different. You're not. Why is your content so mean and so exploitative? Well, stupid question. Obviously because it gets views. Again, this is rage bait. It works. His comment sections are full of vitriolic comments toward these poor guests who again have been so vulnerable and brave in coming forward and sharing all these details about their financial life and other things.
Okay, I'm a single female and I am going on a show that promised to help, to talk about my finances, and I'm being sexually harassed in the video.
Worst of all, so often the comment sections aren't even focused on the finances. They'll pick one aspect of the person's life or personality and just tear into that. Aaron, trans. There are the worst videos. Caleb made little clips and stuff about Aaron talking about gender affirming surgery, and Caleb is like kind of questioning, should you really have used your emergency fund for that? Is that really an emergency? Oh, you bought medical supplies for healing from your surgery on Amazon? Were those really necessary? Oh, they were just for comfort while you're healing from a surgery? Shut up. And guess what? His audience was blatantly, horrifically, atrociously transphobic in all of the comments. And he does nothing to stop that. He does nothing to minimize it. He encourages it, and it makes me so furious. I'm literally getting hot. Jesus Christ. So now I want to dive a bit deeper into some potential routes of debt payoff. I think there are 3 main options. Pay your debt off ASAP, more long-term manageable payments, or declare bankruptcy. So let's start with that. If your debt is putting a major strain on your life, you cannot keep up with the payments, or the total is just insurmountable, bankruptcy could be the right option for you. It's obviously not something to take lightly because it does come with penalties and certain consequences. It can stay on your credit report for up to 10 years. But still, for many people, this kind of fresh start is literally life-saving. However, it is so deeply stigmatized. Many people, even in super severe debt, would not even consider filing bankruptcy because of the weight and shame attached.
Fortunately, there are lawyers like me out here to explain to people that it's not their own personal fault that they've gotten into debt. You know, when people end up filing bankruptcy because they had leukemia, how dare they, right? They better be living in a van. How about the women whose husbands left them holding the bag with children and no child support? Oh, they should live in a van too, right? You're allowed to want to live in a van. You're allowed to think that bankruptcy is not right for you. But to assume that it's bad for everybody who does it suggests that you have no idea how the economy works. And there are a lot of people who need some help who cannot be living in vans.
As Astra Taylor wrote, conversations about debt are never purely about economics. They are always also conversations about power, morality, and shame. Shame, like wealth, is not evenly distributed in our society. For working class people, insolvency is often seen as a sign of profligacy and personal irresponsibility, while large corporations and the wealthy routinely walk away from their obligations and are celebrated as savvy for doing so. Donald Trump can boastfully call himself the king of debt for his string of strategic bankruptcies. The average debtor would never dare. And I think those are such crucial points, especially about like the double standards we have about debt and the way that we see it. The fact that the wealthy are often able to benefit from quote unquote good debt, while the rest of us just struggle. So again, some people see bankruptcy or any other form of debt relief or debt forgiveness as this unfair, easy way out. Because it's as if we all just collectively believe that debt payoff should involve suffering. You must repent for your financial sins. This kind of philosophy is present in so much personal finance content. Jania Belafonte wrote in this 2005 profile of Dave Ramsey, implicit in Ramsey's teachings is the notion that debt is a moral weakness, a failure to embrace Protestant values of industry and restraint. To a degree, Ramsey is resurrecting an idea that until the 1950s remained central to American life. Owing money was sinful. Therefore, you should be embarrassed. You deserve to be publicly shamed for your debts. You must face the consequences of your financial mistakes and feel the pain of an ultra-tight budget. Enter the next option. Pay off your debt as soon as possible. Many finance creators, as I've alluded to throughout this video, will tell you that this is the way. Duh, it is simple math. You want to pay the least amount of interest, and you're going to save money overall. Suffer a little bit now or a lot, and at least you'll pay your debt off sooner. And ideally, this method involves both earning more money, so you're going to get a second job or some side hustles, and you're going to cut your expenses to the bare minimum. As Ramsey says, you're going to be living on rice and beans and rice.
Becky's on Twitter. Do you literally mean beans and rice, or is that an exaggeration to make a point? Becky, you've got to be kidding me. Of course not. It means lower your stupid butt lifestyle.
Honestly, this whole time, I really thought he meant it literally too.
It means quit going out to eat. You're broke. Get your dadgum coupons out and have a meal plan and actually cook from scratch because it saves money. And don't go on vacation. You're broke. And don't buy that. You're broke. Live on less than you make. That's what it means.
In order to pay off your debt as soon as possible, maybe you can move back in with family or just get more roommates. And okay, this strategy does work for some people. We've seen countless stories of people saying, yeah, I moved back home with my parents. It was not the most fun, but I was able to pay a ton of debt, save a lot of money. And if you're privileged and lucky enough to be able to do that, and it works for you, that's great. I think this kind of strategy is most feasible for people who could pay their debts off within a year or so. Like, yeah, I can be hardcore for a year. I'll cut down, I'll be very strict, let's get it done. And that's great, because you can make a ton of progress in this kind of circumstance. But for others, these kind of tips just don't work. Their circumstances are different. They can't just move somewhere cheaper or get extra jobs. Maybe they have kids and all the costs and obligations that come along with that. Or maybe the amount of debt you have is so much that, yeah, it's not going to be a year. It's not going to be temporary, short-term suffering. If it's going to take you multiple years of hardcore, strict, no nonsense, no fun, no Spotify budgeting, that is simply not sustainable for most people. I think just like mentally, psychologically, it would be too much and too long to put yourself under so much pressure and stress. So lastly, we come to the slow but steady payoff. I want to use this example of a TikTok creator named Leftist Mommy. Her name is Kate. I heard her story. Her TikToks came up on my feed months ago and I saved them because her situation and the way she explains her debt philosophy really struck a chord with me. It's simple, but it's also kind of radical. So let's get into it. She's talked about how her family got into about $30,000 of credit card debt in a year. They live in LA, things are expensive, but they were in a good financial position until 2020 happened. She was pregnant, The pandemic hit, her husband lost his job, he ended up having to pick up odd jobs, work like 80 hours a week, and earn a lot less money.
While we were like making less money, everything has become incrementally more expensive. I had a baby and wasn't able to go back to work for a year, so I was putting basically all of our groceries, all of our gas, all of our necessities onto credit cards because you can't pay rent with a credit card. So we would have to use his pay for rent and anything else that couldn't be put on a credit card, and then we'd put everything else on the credit cards.
And this is such a familiar story. Obviously, again, 2020 was an incredibly challenging and stressful time for almost everyone, but this is a classic example of our lack of social safety nets, for one, and also our inability to save up a substantial emergency fund because, again, a lot of people are like, savings? What is that? Where's that money gonna come from? So many people are in precarious situations, so if one disaster strikes, everything can spiral out of control. Anyway, since 2020, Kate and her husband both got new jobs, plus they're doing a couple side hustles. They're earning much more, but they're still dealing with inflation, and now they're playing catch up with all that debt.
I turned my $30,000 in credit card loans into a loan consolidation with an 8% interest rate. We're paying about $1,500 a month to pay that off.
And I think this is a great strategy. They were able to lower their interest rate and turn everything into just one easy payment. That's fantastic. To me, it sounds like they're doing everything right. And quickly, I do want to acknowledge the privilege of their situation in that they were both able to get better, higher paying jobs, because we all know it's not as simple as a lot of finance creators present it to be. Oh, just get a higher paying job. Have you ever thought of getting a higher paying job? It's like, yeah, obviously. And Kate does acknowledge that a lot. She acknowledges that they're lucky to be in a much better position.
We are currently not doing Snowball, not doing Dave Ramsey, not throwing everything at our debt. We're doing the lowest minimum payments on our debt consolidation loan and still living our lives. We're still spending, investing, saving, living. I'm paying off my debt. I have side hustles. I have a salary. Like, what more do you want from me?
This is where the finance bros would say, you should be cutting more expenses. You could try to work more, hustle. Imagine if you were paying $3,000 a month towards your debt. You could pay it off this many months sooner and pay this much less in interest.
I'm not willing to do anything to get out of debt. I'm not willing to have 3 jobs and not spend time with my children. My mental health and my quality of life is more important to me than paying off that debt, and that doesn't make me a bad person.
And this was the part that I think is so simple but kind of radical, and it really shouldn't be, but so many people, especially commenters, hate to hear this. You're trying to pay off your debt, but you're not willing to do anything?
And my debt is so tremendous that $20 here, $100 there is not making an impact. The cost of living and low wages is to blame for the financial woes of most Americans. And being told that we can incrementally make these big differences if we just give up our quality of life for 5-10 years is absurd.
Because the debt payoff world is so strict, and again, there's so much moralizing, some people literally cannot compute the idea of doing like a more relaxed or long-term payoff. It's like you have to be all or nothing. You have to be sacrificing everything. I just find it so interesting that we are often so personally invested in and even offended by other people's financial decisions. Like, why should it make a difference to any of us whether she and her family are paying their debts at all, let alone on time or how much she's paying? Like, why should we care? Some people will still say, but the math, you're gonna pay more in interest. The horror. And yeah, that might be true. But again, this comes down to different methods of debt payoff. Like I mentioned earlier, there are different ways to go about this. There is not just one objective correct answer for everyone. Like, people tend to be pretty accepting of like, oh, debt snowball versus debt avalanche. You know, it depends if your goal is to be the most cost effective or to pay down your debts the fastest or to just like trick your brain into believing that you are making progress. Do you just want to be able to pay things in manageable chunks? There are different ways to go about this. Overall, I just loved finding Kate's story. Again, it is really not remarkable. It is not different than what hundreds or thousands or millions of other people have gone through, but I just find it so satisfying to hear someone talk about debt this way. She's not ignoring it or disregarding it. She's not even minimizing it. They're taking it seriously. They have a plan and they're paying it off. But what is seen as kind of radical is that they are not buying into that narrative that the only way to pay off your debt is by punishing yourself and removing all joy from your life until you're debt free. Let's end this video with one more quote from Astra Taylor. Hundreds of millions of people are in debt not because they are immoral and live beyond their means, but because they are denied the means to live. And I think that's my big takeaway from this whole video in thinking about debt and the way that it's represented online, especially. Ultimately, specifically here in the US, unless major structural changes are made, having some kind of debt will continue to be the reality for the vast majority of people. I obviously don't think that that's a good thing. I wish that was not the case. I wish it didn't have to be this way. But if debt is part of our reality, we should be sharing personal finance advice. We should be less judgmental of each other. We can be more transparent about these things. It's incredible to hear people share real numbers, how much they earn, how much they're saving, how much they're paying toward debt. It's really important. But most of all, we have to remove that element of shame. It does nothing to help us. Though some people do say they watch like Caleb Hammer or Dave Ramsey to feel that shame. Like when they kind of feel like being yelled at, they'll turn on a clip like that. Or watching someone in a worse position makes you feel better about yourself, you know? Classic. And if that really, really works for you and helps you be motivated, I guess, okay. But I just don't think that focusing on guilt and shame, projecting that onto other people, I don't think that that is the best way to go about this. Okay, that is all. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Thank you again to Warby Parker for sponsoring. Click the link in the description. Check out that sweet deal. I am literally so out of breath. I feel like I've been holding my breath trying to read this script. The belly continues to grow. Clarky is here, as always. Anyway, stay tuned for future internet analysis episodes. Okay, thanks. Bye!